Jimmy Morris, well on his way to another World Series title.
15 years ago,
You got your shot at baseball. You got hurt.
Jimmy Morris put his dreams aside.
Coach?
Counselor, don't report that, Esther.
I never do.
But sometimes,
Hey, Coach, you want to throw? I'll throw a couple.
Yeah, Dad, bring the heat.
when you least expect it,
Oh my God!
dreams come back to life.
I threw today.
How hard?
Pretty hard.
Anybody want to tell me how we lost that game?
Quit out there.
I'm talking about having dreams. You don't have dreams, you don't have anything. You're the one who should be wanting something more. Last time I checked, scouts aren't looking for high school science teachers.
We start winning, you try out again.
You serious?
Yeah.
All right.
To the district champion, ours. Now it's your turn, coach.
It started as a simple bet.
I promised to try out.
It was this thing to get the kids to start playing.
It became the most incredible true story
Rule number one is arms slow down when they get up.
in baseball history. From the studio that brought you Remember the Titans,
We've got an 8-year-old boy who waited all day in the rain to see his daddy try to do something that nobody believed he could do. Now, what are we telling him if you don't try now?
this spring,
You bringing some kids? Besides your own?
I'm here for me.
For you. Jimmy, come on, you're up.
Just a second.
I'm not doing it.
Don't hurt yourself.
his dream was impossible.
You the old guy?
I'm the old guy.
How fast were you throwing 15 years ago?
85, 86.
You just threw 98 miles an hour.
No.
But his journey was extraordinary.
To Coach Jimmy Morris, the man who taught us about wanting something more.
Dennis Quaid,
Do you know how many guys can throw the ball 98 miles an hour?
Not many.
the rookie.
Hey everybody, Pastor Jeremy here, and we're back with another episode of Faith and Culture. We're always talking to people who are utilizing their faith in our current culture. And today I have a very special guest. I have the rookie himself with us, Jim Morris, and he's going to share a little bit about his story and even his journey to faith and how all that has come about. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear about it as we continue in this series. And listen, here's the first thing that you got to understand. Jim is a baseball guy. I'm a baseball guy. And so we're going to talk some baseball, and we're going to talk about faith and the implementation of his journey of faith and how it really occurred, and then just the application of that as well. We're excited about that. So Jim, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're joining us.
Thanks, Pastor Jeremy. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Listen, tell us a little bit. First, we'll start all the way back, growing up, where you grew up, talk about your parents, and any kind of early influences that kind of guided you along. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, man. Born here, right down the road at Balboa. My mom said it was the zoo, but then I found out it was a hospital. And we moved constantly. Dad was in the military, served on diesel subs back then.
Wow.
And so we moved a lot. And baseball, for me, was the one constant. Because everything in my life was changing so much and so rapidly. Like, we'd be on one concept at school in one place, and we moved to another state. They're on something different, and I found myself behind. Now, I know that fathers are supposed to be the main dream makers in your lives. They're supposed to help you push towards your dream, give you the boundaries, and help you give that drive that you need to give to be successful. Mine was not. And pretty much I was the blame for everything that ever happened. And to the point where I tell audiences, the bruises go away. It's the words that stick with you.
Yeah.
And he's holding my baby brother in his arms one day. I'm 5. And he looks down at me, out of my mom's earshot, and he goes, "This is the one we wanted.
Oh, wow.
And we never wanted you." And for a 5-year-old, that was devastating to me because I knew I never did anything right. I knew I got 4-letter words called at me. And it just, in between the white lines of a ball field, I could be the kid I was supposed to be.
Was he a guy that was, so he was military, would he go on deployment and come back, or would he be just working in whatever town you guys were in?
Different. He would go on deployments a lot, and then
Okay.
it became more where he became a recruiter or they tried to find place for him everywhere. I mean, he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever known in my life who wasted it.
Wow.
And I went to nuclear school because of how smart he was in math, and got in a fight with the instructor and got kicked out after 2 weeks. I mean, just not a great role model unless you're fashioning something bad.
Yeah.
But the person who's supposed to love you the most and pick you up and dust you off is the person who told me I wasn't smart enough and I wasn't good enough and you'll never make it and you're going to embarrass yourself.
Wow.
And so on the field, I knew that was fun for me. I could be that kid. And so football, baseball, basketball, track, anything I could do in a team-oriented, specific deal is what I wanted to do, because in athletics, I knew I was good. And it didn't matter what he said to me after that. I knew from my teammates pat me on the back that I was doing okay.
How were you introduced to baseball specifically, and what age?
4.
Okay, who introduced you? Do you remember?
My grandmother, my
Really?
mom's mom.
Okay, tell me about that.
She rode on a bus from Texas all the way out here, and I think it was Oakland at the time, and she brought me my first ball, glove,
That's
and
cool.
bat, and all pitchers can hit, and so I'm like, I'm going to be a
That's
hitter.
right.
But I would play, and I would throw the ball off the side of the wall at military housing until they got tired of it, and then she or my mom would come out and play catch with me for a while, or let me hit, and I just fell in love with the sport, and that's the time I fell in love with the Oakland Athletics.
Okay.
And you're watching Vida Blue and all these different people come up, and I thought, I want to be Vida Blue, man. He's awesome. I'm going to kick my leg up that high. And I did that in a Little League game once. And when I did, I threw it halfway up the backstop, and the umpire came out and he goes, let's not do that again.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, sir. But it was fun because I like watching. It doesn't matter if you're a pastor or you're an athlete, whatever your job is. If you're having fun and you have that passion for it, it's fun watching those people at work because they really know and they really have in their heart what it is they want to do and accomplish. And they have fun doing it.
Yes.
But not everything is a gripe. Not everything is negative. This is what my direction is. This is where I'm going. And that door may lead to a different opportunity, but right now, 100% this way.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel, side note, about the A's leaving Oakland and going to Vegas?
I don't want to say anything negative about anywhere, but Vegas is not one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
And the Athletics have been a part of Oakland for a long, long time. And you're taking history out of there.
Yeah.
During the movie process, Dennis and I went around to all these big cities because they were afraid adults wouldn't like the movie. And so they sent us on the Disney jet, which doesn't suck.
Yeah, I bet.
All over the country to these big cities. And like Oakland, we get there and we get up, we do makeup, we do interviews on TV, morning shows, radio. And then at night, we'd introduce the movie, have a reception, and then the people would watch it. And in Oakland, I got to meet and hang out with Vida Blue.
Oh, come on.
And not as a 5-year-old kid looking up, but as somebody who was 40 still looking up and going, wow, everything you gave to the game. And so getting to be a part of that was a lot of fun.
They had some great teams.
Yes, they did.
A's. Oh, they had some great teams. And it's sad to me that they're moving. You know, it is. It really is sad. But I mean, it's whenever you have leadership in an area that doesn't see the value of it and can't seem to make that happen, it's sad. I mean, the Padres almost moved before they were able to get a stadium built here. We were very concerned about that, and now it's the place to be for a baseball game. If you haven't experienced a game at Petco, you got to do it.
I've been there.
It's special.
It is a blast, man.
Oh, and they do it right, and everything is. And they're trying to get a good team on the field and all that. So I was hoping for something like that in Oakland, but and on top of that, it's hard in California. The way politics are here, it's just so difficult. It's so difficult, and so you see the infrastructure crumbling here and everything else. And so when you try to pitch a stadium, Oakland has a real tough time trying to get that passed. And so it's just a bummer. It's really unfortunate. But anyway, moving forward. Okay, tell us about. So you're playing baseball. You're seeing some value in that in terms of really a confidence maybe building, the confidence you're not getting at home, maybe from your dad, but yet baseball, sports, that is really starting to give you some confidence and at least some encouragement from people. So take us from that point, Little League, I guess it would be, and then kind of moving up. You continue to play, obviously, and into high school?
We didn't have a high school baseball team.
Okay, so did you play like American Legion, or what'd you do?
Played summer league ball.
You
It
didn't have a high
wasn't even
school
called American Legion at the time.
Where were you in high school at this time? Texas?
In Brownwood.
Yeah, okay.
But the first part of my ninth grade year, we were still in Miami.
Okay.
And our high school, MacArthur High School in Hollywood, Florida, second freshman ever to make the varsity baseball team.
Were you pitching?
Outfield.
Outfield, uh-huh.
And the first freshman ever to do it, was our shortstop from our summer winter league. We'd play baseball during the summers and travel around, and we'd play softball during the winters and travel around. Well, Carmen Canoni was our shortstop, and then I was the second guy ever to make it, and I played left field. And 2 weeks after the season starts, my dad said, guess what? You're moving to Brownwood, Texas. And I watched my parents do a lot of horrible things to each other and say even worse. And that move for me was the one thing they both agreed on. And that move ended up changing and saving my life.
Why did they agree on that move? What was it about moving from that Miami area
as
to
a
Brownwood?
teenager, I have no idea, Pastor Jeremy, about what all their reasons were.
Yeah.
But I think part of it was they wanted me to play for the famed high school football coach in Texas at the time, Gordon Wood. And so we moved back to play, and his saying was, I'd rather watch grass grow than watch a baseball game. So we didn't have high school baseball. When did they get high school baseball? The year after I graduated.
Oh, wow, okay.
But I did learn a lot of things from him. But Brownwood High School in the middle of my ninth grade year was the 30th school I'd been to in 9 years.
30th school.
30th school.
So you played football?
I did play football,
Okay.
yes.
And then you did the travel ball or whatever, club ball?
Mostly it was just us against little towns around us. That's what travel ball was back then to me. And then if you got along further, you'd have regionals and maybe a state tournament. And we got second state one time. It was just a lot of fun playing with kids. Everybody would show up to a summer game, and I'm striking everybody out, and I'm like, I am good. And then I went, and they've been hauling hay all day. They can't swing a bat. And so there's a lot of going on in my mind going, maybe I'm not as good as I thought.
Yeah.
But baseball became my love.
And so has there been any introduction of faith at this point yet? Or
when I moved in with my grandparents, faith hit me in the face.
And what time was this? So you're high school, you're still with your parents in Brownwood?
I'm with my grandparents.
Okay,
I
so
stayed with them for 3 years.
When they moved from Miami to...
They didn't move, I did.
Oh, you did? So they sent you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you're sent to live with your grandparents. Okay. Wow. And that's where you're introduced to faith.
I am, and it is a funny time because it's 1979, 1980, and it's when church is four walls, and everybody inside those walls is going to hell. And it didn't matter what you did.
Yeah.
Nobody's good enough. My grandparents were actually the first people living like Jesus before Jesus became the big thing. And I watched them make Thanksgiving dinners for families that couldn't afford it, buy Christmas presents for families with kids that couldn't afford anything, pay bills for somebody so they could keep their dream going on a little bit longer. And they did it anonymously. They didn't want the credit.
Yeah.
And I had two rules when I walked into my grandparents' house, and I was terrified because this was my father's parents. And I thought, he came from somewhere.
Yeah.
I had two rules. If you do it, own it. Own it, live up to it, and move on was number one. Number two, tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said because the truth is the truth. It doesn't change. Yeah. And those were my rules. And they took a 15-year-old kid in who could have fallen off the rails at any time because of the way he was brought up, and they saved me. And my grandmother was our church secretary for 30 years. My grandfather owned a menswear store. Brownwood, Texas, population 20,000. It's still, decades later, there's 20,000 people there. But people came in from all over the country to buy suits. He'd fought in World War II, so he knew everybody. Mm. And so back in 2020, Dennis Quaid and I are doing a podcast. And I'm telling him this story about my grandfather. I said, one day, as I'm working for my grandfather, this man walks in, and I recognize him from TV. And it's back when there were 3 channels, and I was the remote control.
Yeah.
And it was Gene Autry. And so I'm telling Dennis this story, and he goes, no, wait. Tell me that story again. And I tell him, he goes, so you're saying that I played you in a movie, and my uncle was your grandfather's best friend.
Wow.
And I thought, man, as big as the world is, it's a lot smaller than what we think it is.
That's amazing. That's
but
amazing.
He touched a lot of people doing that.
Yeah. Now, when you lived there, you saw them model Christianity. Was there a time during that where they led you to Christ, or you accepted Christ during that time because of their modeling of it, or did something else happen in your life that brought you to faith?
Oh, what brought me to faith is a good question, because like most Christians and most human beings, I've come face to face with faith, and I've kind of fallen back. And then I've come face to face, and I've fallen back. Mm-hmm. And I think that what happened when I was 35 turned my whole world upside down. That's when I knew God had a purpose for me.
Yeah.
Up until that point, I thought being a dad, being a coach, being a teacher, being the best person I could be. And I was nice and polite to everybody, but there were wrong turns I took, and there were things I would like to take back. But that makes us, there's free will.
That's right.
It can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yep.
And early in your life, when things are going good, you think you got it all under control.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out I don't have hardly anything in control, not even of my own circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think once you realize that, that's when faith can really pull you in and help you grow. And so, in and out.
Yeah.
But they definitely were the floorboard of my faith because of the way I watched them do things.
That's powerful. Now, so take me from high school and after high school, baseball-wise. What are you doing? Are you junior college? What'd you do?
I played summer league baseball, and at some point, this roving minor league scout for MLB comes by and sees me throw and hit and run. And at first, I'm going to be a center fielder, and I'm going to hit. And then all of a sudden, my swing became too long, and hey, but you're left-handed, and you pitch, and you throw pretty good. Your ball moves a lot. And back then, I thought I threw hard because I was striking everybody out, but basically 87, 88, sometimes 89. But I had a knuckle curve, and so that would offset my fastball go one way, the curveball go the other way. And while we're in the middle of this talk, I'll just go ahead and go to your audience. Baseball is not everybody's dream, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But God is going to pull us in the direction that He knows is going to get our attention.
Amen. That's it.
And when the movie's made, I'm going to New York to the Hall of Fame. They're putting the movie in during Father's Day in 2002. On the plane, and I notice him immediately, and he and his wife's beautiful, he's beautiful. It's ridiculous. Nobody should be that pretty.
Yeah.
But it's Jim Caviezel.
Oh, yeah.
And he stops at my row, and he goes, I almost got to play you.
Yeah.
And I said, dude, you're way too good looking to play
awesome.
me. And then 2 years later, he played Jesus. And I thought, oh, man.
That's
You
amazing.
can have somebody play you.
That is
But
amazing.
it's just the people I've gotten to meet because of the faith I've had and getting to meet people like Jim Caviezel. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing watching Dennis Quaid's faith turn into something full bore.
Yep.
And so I've had a lot of fun. There's the people that I hope in some way I've touched.
Yeah.
And my grandfather always had this saying. He goes, you can give lip service all day long, but they're going to watch your body language. They're going to watch how you act and treat others. Mm-hmm. And they're going to see a whole lot more of you conversationally than you ever converse.
Amen.
And so we're going to act right.
Yeah.
And that's just who he was. Made me take my grandmother on lunch dates once a week while I was in high school so I would know how to treat women.
That's awesome.
Arms across the street.
Yeah.
Keep them inside away from the sidewalk. Car doors, restaurant doors, pull out chairs, fold out napkins. And it was just an amazing tutelage because I'd never been taught anything.
Yeah.
I'd been demanded of without ever anything having been explained. Now, I went to church on and off while my dad was in the military. And I was an acolyte at one church and went to Sunday school and everything else. But if the doors had closed and it was late, we would just drive by and go to IHOP or Dunkin' Donuts because it's too late for us to walk in and we don't want to embarrass ourselves. And so church was kind of, if you get there, it's cool, and if you don't, it's not. My grandparents, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Saturday nights, if we had a pot roast dinner up at the church, Wednesday nights, you'd get together, and then you had youth group. And so my grandparents are definitely the root of my faith.
That is powerful. Now, you're in high school, you're there. Was there a relationship with your parents in terms of how did that go when you're halfway across the country now? Would they visit? You went and visited them?
My mom eventually moved back to Brownwood also. And I didn't know it at the time because I'm a teenager. And they had fought my whole life, so what difference is that?
Yeah.
But there were big problems going on. And so she came back, and she cheered me on in baseball and football. And when she was away from him is when she treated me the best. When you're kind of in the mix of all that tornado of hatefulness, it kind of sprays out on everybody. And I was the victim of that, being sprayed. And her temper would come out on me. But after she got away from him, things started changing. And so, yeah, she would cheer for me. She'd do concession stands. She would build me up. She wasn't tearing me down anymore.
Did they stay together or get divorced?
They stayed together until my first year of the minor league ball, and then they separated. And that's when she met the man that I think changed her life.
Really?
And Charles was fantastic. And everything in a father that I would have wanted had I had the choice.
Any relationship with your dad now? Is he still around, or is
No,
passed on?
I can't say it because we're doing a podcast, but the last thing he said to me was at my grandmother's funeral, and she was 98, and I went up and I patted him on the shoulder, and I said, Dad, I'm so sorry, but Alice is with Ernest now. And he basically said, don't ever blank and talk to me again in the middle of church.
Wow.
I thought, you got it. 7 months later, he had a massive heart attack and died.
Wow.
And people had said, you need to rebuild that relationship. The person that married Sean and I, our pastor in Dallas, he goes, we don't push people out of our lives. We change the order of importance in which they are. Go back and try one more time. And so I'd gone back and I tried to apologize for anything I may have done and reconcile. And he goes, it was never as bad as you thought it was. I mean, totally dismissing my perception of anything that had to do with what I went through as a kid growing up. And so I tried to help that relationship. It didn't work. I moved on. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, is the perfect amalgam of my grandparents. And I've told Bob this before. I said, if I could have chosen a father, I would have chosen you.
Yeah.
And you've raised great kids, and you're calm, and you're serene, and you teach, and you communicate. And he started crying, and I don't know this, what your audience knows, but sometimes when you have babies, is when men learn how to cry.
Yeah.
And when the nurse puts a doctor in your arms and you find out, hey, I am totally responsible for this, I am emotional.
Yep.
And so he cried, I cried, but it was, I wanted better, but if I hadn't have been through what I went through, I wouldn't be where I am sitting right now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next, is how that's affected you. Because, it can go a couple of ways. It can go to where it's completely rebellious. I didn't have the father figure. Then guys look at God as their dad, right? That God's just like my dad. He's going to ignore me and push me away too. But that didn't sound like that happened to you. Maybe a phase or two in there that happened, but
I think the biggest problem I had with my faith at that time as a teenager was I was afraid God viewed me the same way that my dad did.
Yeah.
And so I was afraid to give up too much without realizing what I was sacrificing.
Yeah.
But then you get back to my grandparents. My senior year in high school, my grandfather trips one day in a store, hops up, acts like nothing's gone wrong. Over the next 18 months, he loses 150 pounds, numerous specialists, cane walker, wheelchair, ALS, exposed to some chemical in the Philippines during World War II. But I watched that 6'3", 260-pound man who led a city and part of a state politically and on every board possible to be on, lead Texas. And I watched that same man sitting in a wheelchair doing the same thing because character is character.
Yeah.
And he definitely had it. And so those 3 years to me meant more than anything.
It's good examples that you were able to have in your family, even after all the difficulties there. So did you go into the minor leagues then after some time? Or?
Well, I got drafted by the Yankees.
Okay.
Right out of high school because of that scout who had seen
Yes.
me.
Okay. So you're drafted.
And they're going to give me a plane ticket and send me to Bradenton, Florida. Get a letter from George Steinbrenner. And I'm like, no, I got to stay close to home because Ernest is getting real sick now.
Okay. Yeah.
And I want to stay close. Well, my dad had retired, moved back to Brownwood. So I'm pitching a summer league game one night, strike out 17 people, hit 3 home runs. I strike out the last time up. Who's at the end of the dugout after the game to tell me how much I will never amount in baseball?
Oh, wow. That's like...
And by now I'm taller than him, right? And so I've learned in one ear and out the other. So I'm kind of looking over at him as he'd be berating me. And I see this guy in a cowboy hat and jeans starched so much they could stand by themselves with a buckle on about that big, because you know you're in Texas. And his name was Jack Allen. He was a coach at Ranger Junior College. And he came up to me, he goes, I know about your grades. I know you want to be a ball player. And I know what your grandparents are going through. You come play baseball for me. I'll get you classes that you can pass. Basket weaving was tough, but I got into it.
Pastor Chad knows about that.
But on Fridays, when you get out of English at noon, you're going to go home for the weekend. So during the fall of 1982, I would play the fall schedule unless there were games on Fridays and Saturdays, because I was at home in Brownwood with my grandparents at the hospital. And I did that for 4.5 months. And my grandfather passed away last November of 1982, the largest funeral I've ever seen in my life. And all I could do is look at his coffin and go, he finally doesn't hurt. Because I thought, that has to hurt, because your brain works fine and your body just quits listening. It's got to be frustrating and menacing and everything else.
That would be brutal.
But his faith never wavered. And the person that I didn't realize how much it took out of, because I was a teenager, you know, everything's about me, was my grandmother.
Yeah.
And the amount that caring for somebody has on you, that you've been through the World War through. Yeah. You've been through the stock exchange exploding, and you've been through the Dust Bowl, and now you're fighting this again. And it seemed like that generation had to fight for every single thing they got, and they learned how to work. And they never complained. That was my grandparents. And so at that funeral, I was sad and I was crying, but I was also happy that he was going where he knew he was going.
Yeah.
Because
he
he
had that
knew.
confidence. Yep. He had that confidence. That's
And
important.
so a month after that, I never went back to junior college. Supplemental draft in January of 1983. I get drafted in the first round, I think as a number 4 pick, $35,000 to chase my dream, and I thought, I am rich.
Yeah.
And for 9 months, I played rich. And, you know, my father, leaving Brownwood for the last time, could have said a lot to me. I love you, be careful, good luck, I hope you make it, I wish you the best. All he could muster is, do not take that money and go buy a little red sports car. So I bought a little red sports car.
Of course you did.
And this is where God's sense of humor comes in. I take my grandparents' faith. I'm driving from Brownwood to Phoenix for my first spring training with the Brewers. I drive through Big Lake, Texas, where the story takes place. And I thought, who would live here? God has a long memory. Yeah. And 15 years later, that's where I live. And just things you think of that at the time, you're just like, oh, this is just bypassing. And it comes back and it gets you. And but it was a place I needed to be at the time I was there.
So you go out to spring training, and take us through that minor league journey a little bit. And
first spring training, I told my friends, you turn the TV on in 6 months, I'll be there, because it's what I want.
Yeah.
And it was all about me. 19, emotions on my sleeve. That first spring training, I get there's 100 guys there, and I think, man, the whole organization's here. And that was just the pitchers. And then I go through my first spring training, don't make any teams. Totally, I gave up home runs that still have not landed.
Yeah.
Back in 1983. And so they sent me to Florida. We kind of teamed up with the Orioles, and we kind of had extended spring training and did some things until rookie ball started.
Yep.
And that's when they drafted all the big college guys. What I didn't realize in Brownwood was we didn't have high school baseball. I didn't really play college baseball. And I had fallen so far behind after I left Florida. I was playing with the best of the best down there. Yeah. I mean, Odeby McDowell, former outfielder, he was a senior the year I was a freshman. And so these guys were all in school and fantastic athletes, and I got to Brownwood where baseball is an afterthought. And so I did what I had to do to survive. I played football, and I ran track, and I played basketball. But during the summers, man, I played baseball. And that first 5.5 years of minor league ball, 6 surgeries.
6 surgeries. All arm, knee,
All arm.
what? All arm.
Including Tommy John.
Oh, you did.
And
Wow.
it was amazing because at 24, I'm in Dr. Andrews' office in Birmingham. And you played baseball. You know, he was one of the top orthopedic
He was the
surgeons
guy, yep.
for a long time. And he looks at me at 24 and he goes, Jimmy, I can fix this and put you back out on the field, but the decision is yours. What do you want to do? And I looked at him and I said, Doc, it's time for me to grow up. If I can't play the game I love anymore, maybe I can teach it. I'll find a group of kids teaching the opposite of what I did, and they'll be pretty good. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to college. I'll get a degree. Eventually, I'll meet somebody, get married, start a family, buy a house, get a dog, grow up. That is my plan. He goes, that's a great plan. Start with a dog.
There you go.
And then something funny happened when I went to college. The first class I took was a summer class of anatomy and physiology, and this was at Howard Payne Bible College. And I learned nobody takes anatomy and physiology during the summer because it'll wear you out. And Dr. Roth was our professor, and there are 19 female registered nurses and me in that class. And here I've been told I've been dumb my whole life. And so I believed that the lies that the deceiver wants to tell you, they stick. And then Dr. Roth, after our first test, he's handing the test back to the nurses as they leave, and he keeps me after class, and I'm like, here it comes. I'm done. Too dumb to go to class. And he takes my test, and he turns it over, and he looks me straight in the eye, and he said, you need to go to medical school.
Wow.
And I said, but I'm dumb. He goes, it took me a week to come up with these questions. Your answers are better than my questions.
Wow.
He goes, Dr. Bird's son is going to Annapolis. There's a spot waiting on you if you want to go to medical school. Wow. And I thought, he goes, why do you think they all want to be your lab partner? And I said, because I look good.
Yeah.
He said, no, you don't. He goes, but you're smart. And that just kind of bred it into me, man. I'm not
Someone
dumb.
believes in you, yeah.
And so he's a dream maker for me. He built me up.
Wow.
And so school became fun. It was something I never gave a second thought to. It was just something I had to do everywhere we moved, and I was behind everywhere we went, so I never concentrated on it. Now I find out I'm not dumb, and so school's a blast.
So did you stay there and finish there, or did you go
I
somewhere
did not.
else?
I went to 2 years there. I met my future ex-wife there, and we got married. She got a job at Angelo State out in West Texas, and I went to college at Angelo State. I punted and kicked.
You did.
At 28
Angelo
and 29.
State is playing Point Loma Nazarene University right now in the College World Series, Division II.
Look at that.
I got a couple of our guys that go to our church. One, the head coach of the baseball team at Point Loma, is there, and they just played Angelo State last night. Angelo beat them, and so they're one game away from elimination, but they're 1-1 in the tournament right now. But yeah, pretty cool.
So at 28 and 29, I played college football. I led the country in punting, kickoffs, 80% through the back of the end zone. Teams were coming through and looking at me. I'm like, but I'm 29. They're like, George Blanda kicked till he was a skeleton.
Yeah,
you can
that's
play
right.
forever. And 5'3" hang time. Well, the draft comes and goes in 93, and I'm like, oh, well. I didn't find out until later that there was a phone call because I'm doing a speech in Corpus Christi, and it's a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Reed Ryan, Nolan's son, is there to introduce the new minor league team coming into Corpus. Well, so that made 3 white guys. I'm not being racial, I'm just saying the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. There was Reed Ryan, there was me, and there was this man in the back, and he kept looking at me. And I'm like, what does he want? So I sign autographs when I'm done, I take pictures, and afterwards he comes up to me, he goes, do you remember me? I said, no, sir. Because back in 93, when the Steelers were going to draft you in the second round to punt and kick off, why'd you not call back?
No way.
And I said, what are you talking about? He said, the only phone we had was to your wife, who was at the university. And we called, and you had 20 minutes to call back, and you didn't. And everybody thought you didn't want to play.
That's terrible. Wow.
But for 30 seconds, I was the maddest human being on the planet.
Yeah.
And I called Shauna, my wife, and I said, this is what happened, and I'm furious. She got furious. And then she said, but you wouldn't be where you are now.
Yeah.
Who knows what life would have been in that direction.
Yeah, right?
And now, because of baseball and sticking through it, I think God uses what we're most familiar with and what our dream is to pull us where he wants us to be. And then he goes, now you're going to do something for me. I just didn't get it at the time what was going on.
Wow. So you finished college, and what job did you take after college? Did you go over there to the Lake?
Started teaching and coaching.
No,
everywhere. I helped Howard Payne start their baseball program.
Okay.
And then
Now, where was Howard Payne? In Texas?
In Brownwood.
Okay. Is it still there?
It's a Baptist seminary, yes.
Okay.
And because of those Bible classes, it was fun. We had a professor, Dr. Robert Smith, and he had to be 85 back then. But you did nothing but sit down and write while you were in there, so you never even looked at him. And by the time you get done looking at class across the whole chalkboard, back when they were chalkboards, he had painted everything he had talked about in the way that it happened along the timeline of the Bible. And it was the most amazing classes I ever took. And he was one of my favorite professors because of that.
That's
because
phenomenal.
Everything I just wrote is on the board. It was in picture form. So that was cool. But then I started high schools. High school teams won, science classes excelled. End up at Reagan County High School in Big Lake where the movie takes place. Inherit 8 kids. I don't know how much, well, I know you know a lot about baseball. 8 is not enough.
Yep.
So I begged, borrowed, and stole 2 kids. They made straight A's, and they could not play baseball. So the first season there, we had 10 kids. And because of the way I grew up and around baseball and all the idols that I had, I want to teach them about the history of baseball. But that's not what these kids needed. And apparently it wasn't what I needed either. And what came out of it was, I'm going to push them as hard as I can without breaking them. But we're going to learn things. We're going to learn to do things the right way. And so we had nice uniforms. We learned how to wear our uniforms. We learned how to put our bills in the front of our hats. And I said, in between these white lines, I don't care if you guys hate each other or anything else, but on this field, we're teammates, and we fight for each other. And I pointed at the other dugout, and I said, you see that dugout, whoever's in there? We're never going to talk trash, ever. That doesn't solve anything. It just makes more. And usually you give other people momentum, and then you're in trouble. And I pointed at the umpire's position, and I said, that is my battle to lose. We will never win that battle. And these kids bought into it. And so that first year, we didn't learn much about baseball. What we did learn was how to open doors for teachers. Say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Find out that if we did our homework and actually turned it in, we get credit for it. And they were amazed. And we went back out on the field, and we made the field our home, because our home is where we want to be comfortable, and we want to make it the best we can be, and we don't want anybody else coming on that into our home and destroying it. And so we learned to do the infield, the outfield, the grass, the dirt. There's nothing but caliche, broken up shale in West Texas because of all the oil fields and stuff. And so we took out the infield, we put in dirt from Oklahoma I had brought in, but the kids did all the work. And so we painted dugouts, batting cages, put our Reagan County Owls on the center field fence. I mean, this was their home. They had done it, and they respected it. And they did not want anybody coming on what they had built and beating them there. So the first season, the kids that I inherited, who had won 1 game each year for the 3 years before I get there, won 10 games. They were 10-0 at home.
Wow.
And that's without learning anything about baseball. That's just learning how to be good people. And so the second season, I have a coach pull me over, and this is where the movie actually starts, to tell me, you've taken these kids as far as you can. These kids are losers. The parents are losers. They'll never amount to anything. The parents haven't gone anywhere. They're never going anywhere. If it's ever closer, they're ever behind, these kids will find a way to lose. You can't do anything. Then he put his finger in my chest, which every adult loves. And he goes, you might be a great baseball coach, but you're always going to come in last to people like me because I know how to step on people. You're too nice. 2 of my kids that I didn't see were right around the corner. And they heard all of it. In 90 seconds, this guy who came in after I did ruined 2 years of work. So after the nun scene in the movie, when the movie opens up and we're playing baseball, we get run rule the first 2 games. And because of my grandparents, I didn't know what else to do. I stood on home plate. I sent my kids down the left field line. And I just remember my catcher going, Coach, people come through here on their way to somewhere else. And I thought of me at 19 in my little red sports car, going, wow. I've learned a lot about judgment and misjudgment over the years. And what can I do to help these kids? As I sat there on the plate and I prayed, God, please point me in the right direction. How can I help them? Go down there and teach them what your grandparents taught you. Was immediate and instant, and it was not my thought. Because I'm thinking baseball this and baseball that, and we're going to keep our chins up. Nope, go down there and teach them what Alice and Ernest taught you. And so I went down and started talking about hopes and dreams and goals. And there were lessons that my grandfather taught me when the other men, his salesmen, would go to lunch. I would watch him. And there was one day he's going through suits. And I'm looking at him, and he's putting stuff back in order. And he looked up at me, he goes, Jimmy, what does the sign in the store say? I said, Ernest Morris Menswear. He goes, I don't sell suits. I sell me. And if they buy and believe in me, they're going to keep coming back. Yeah. Well, one day this lady walks into the store, and she's got on overalls and boots and a straw hat. And let's just say from the smell of the boots, she had a pig farm. All the men my grandfather's age are in the back having coffee. They look up, they see this woman who walks in 5 minutes after the store's open and decide she's not buying anything. Look at her. My grandfather sees this from his desk in his office. He gets up, he walks out. He treats her like she should be treated. And before she left his store, she bought 15 suits. And we're not talking run-of-the-mill, let's go in and just get this. Yeah. These are suits that he went to market twice a year for. This was a lot of money, and she paid in cash. And later on, my grandfather didn't know her, the other men didn't know her, but she had something underneath her pig farm called natural gas, and she was worth a lot. But she came back every year when my grandfather was still alive and bought suits from him because of how he treated her when nobody else wanted to.
That's powerful.
And when he walked back by me when she left the store, so good. And he goes, it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what language you speak. If you cut us open, we all bleed red. God made us all the same. Yeah. He goes, don't ever judge anybody till you get to know their heart.
That's good.
And until you're born with your name and you die with your name. What you do with it in between is a legacy you leave behind for others. What type of legacy do you want to leave? If you ever make a promise, live up to it. Because at the end of the day, when you pass away, you're going to be remembered for one thing: were you a truth teller?
It's good. That's good lessons.
The lessons that nobody else saw, that he taught me, were immeasurable. And now I got to tell you, I was still a teenager, and then in my early 20s, you know, I'm in command of me, and everything's about me, and I want what I want when I want it. But those lessons stuck. So when it came back to that group of kids, at the age of 35, and I'm talking about hopes and dreams and goals, one of the lessons he taught me was the road you start taking may not be the one you end up loving the most. He goes, you love baseball. He goes, I don't care. Baseball's not my thing. He goes, but you love it. What dreams might you encounter if you had your head held high and you were watching for those open doors off to the side? He goes, you don't know what you might pass by. Who knows? And since then, I've been a teacher, I've been a coach, a motivational speaker, and I got to be a Major League Baseball player.
It's amazing.
But not when it was about me.
Yeah.
When it was about everything but me. And so as I'm sitting there talking to these kids, they're looking, they're engaged, and I'm like, I got their attention. And I said, you guys have to go out and live life. You can't let life live you. Don't ever let anybody dictate to you what you're going to do with yours. But Coach, what do you want out of us? I want you to compete on the field, compete in the classroom. Go to college if that's what you want. Go to trade school, go to work in the oil field. But make sure it's your decision, because you do not want to wake up one day and go, what if? And that's when my 18-year-old catcher looked at me and goes, well, what about your dreams? I said, my dream is to watch you guys do everything that I just said. Compete and be proud of what it is you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. because we can accomplish so much more than what we're giving our credit for. He goes, that's fine, and we love you too, but we think you still want to play baseball. And I said, no, sir, I'm married. Thank you very much. I don't need my wife ripping off my bad arm and beating me with it. But, Coach, the way you teach us the game, we know your heart's still in it. We know what the other team's going to do before they do it. When you throw us batting practice, we can't hit it. And I said, well, that's because you can't hit. And they started giggling then they're paying attention. But then it hit me. He goes, why are you telling us to chase our dreams if you're not willing to do it yourself? And I'll tell you what I said, because I try not to take life too seriously, because I lived like that for 15 years. Mm-hmm. He goes, why are you telling us to chase our dream? And I said, well, you need to shut up. And then he really started giggling. He goes, well, if we start winning, you try out again. And I said, I can't do that. I am 35. I should be getting out of baseball. Your moms make fresh homemade tortillas for me every time I get on a bus. That's a coaching diet. That's not a playing diet. I said, I've had 9 surgeries. I said, baseball, oh, yeah, and at 28, they cut 85% of my deltoid muscle out of my left arm and said, you will never, ever pitch again, physically impossible, can't be done. I said, Joel, I threw 87 when I was young and talented. I've had 85% of the muscle cut out of my shoulders, no way. And then the other kids started chiming in, and then the bet formed. Well, if we win a district championship, which they've never been a part of in their lifetime, you try out. So for 20 minutes, I argued with, for every reason, I should never do this. And then after 20 minutes, I thought, you win a district championship, I'll embarrass myself. I can do that.
Yeah.
And the bet was born.
The motivation right there for them. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing when you think you have a carrot out there, that motivation. So they obviously won the district. I mean, how did that season go? Share a little bit about the season, ups and downs, or was it just they started cranking, they started really coming together
I'll tell you
and
this,
winning?
we made the bet. They couldn't hit me. By the end of the season, when we're playing for a district championship, I can't get 16 and 17, 18-year-old kids out. They're hitting me all over the park.
That's amazing.
And the last thing I think is, I will go light up a radar gun now. But we're playing for a district championship. We're down by 2 going in the last inning. Kids score 6 runs and win.
Wow.
And it is one of the best sights I've ever seen in my life. I go back to the bus, I start up, the kids are hugging each other, they're hugging their parents. And I'm sitting there crying for these kids because they've just accomplished something that not even they thought they could accomplish. And if I had a small part to play in that, that's good. But I know God's got a big part to play in it. There are so many lessons that are taught.
What a feeling.
And so as I'm crying and starting on the bus, because you know that last line, your teacher's contract and all other duties as assigned, bus driver.
Of course.
And so the bus is warming up. I'm watching the kids. They're taking pictures. They're smiling. Up on the top step of the bus comes my second baseman, my team clown. In the movie, his nickname's Whack. In real life, his nickname is Whack. He sees me giggling, and he starts laughing. I mean, he sees me crying, he starts laughing. I'm like, shut up. And from behind his back, he pulls out a baseball and had Reagan County Owls, District 128 champs, 1999. Everybody signed it. I cry harder. By now, I've forgotten about the bet because they're hitting me. I'm not even thinking about it. And he hugs me around the neck. He goes, we did our part, now it's your turn.
Wow, right away. They were still thinking about that
and
right then.
I was like, oh, no.
Oh.
And so it was actually my father who helped me find the tryout. It was in the Brownwood Bulletin, our paper in Brownwood. They were having it at Howard Payne University, where I went to school.
Okay.
And the Tampa Bay Devil Rays.
Right?
Just a tryout,
Yeah,
18
they
to
have those
24-year-olds.
every so often, yeah.
He goes, Tampa Bay Devil Rays, scout is Doug Gassaway. He's probably about 70 then. He goes, Jimmy, the first 60 or 70 kids that get there between 18 and 24 get to try out. You better get there early because they're going to count you twice. Well, thank you. So on June 19th, 1999, kids and I drive an hour and 10 minutes to Howard Payne. I park down the left field line. I'm watching all these kids get out of their car, tall, thin, athletic looking, brand new bodies, brand new gear. I look down at the gut hang over the elastic band of my softball pants, which is not the picture painted in the movie, thank you, Dennis. And I go, what have I done? And I've been teaching my kids about their grandparents since they could listen. And my 8-year-old son looks up at me, he goes, you made a promise, it's time to get out.
Wow.
And I looked at my 8-year-old son, and I said, you're walking home. And we get out of the car, we go up to the sign-up table. Everybody in front of me signs up. Gasaway, the scout, looks up at me, goes, "How many kids you bring to tryout?" And I looked at my kids and I went, "Well, I got 3." He said, "No, son, 2 tryout."
Oh.
I said, "Well, let me explain something. I made a promise to a group of kids that if they did something nobody thought they could accomplish, I would try to do something I know I can't. I made a promise and I'm doing this. Either you're going to let me throw or I've got to go find somewhere else, but I'm throwing because I promised this." And when I get done, he looks at me with a serious face and he goes, "Son, why didn't you just shave your head like every other coach?" And I said, "Where were you 3 months ago?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "You're going to throw, but you're going to throw last. They had to throw from the outfield. They had to hit. They had to be timed a 60-yard run. Do you want to run?" I said, "I do not run. I'm a coach. I'll help you time them." He did not think that was funny. He goes, "You're going to be last."
Wow.
So
Okay.
I watched everybody try out as the kids and I had a picnic, played games, changed diapers. And it's Texas, and it's summer. It's 105, 106. And he finally calls me out to the mound. Everybody's tried out. The young kid catching me had just turned 19 on June 19th, 1999. I do not remember his name, but I remember that. He and I talk about signs. Gasaway actually comes out to the mound, hands me a baseball, and he goes, "Jimmy, how many pitches do you need to warm up?" And I said, "To embarrass myself, none. I would just like to pitch quickly, run off the field, hopefully remembering to grab my kids on the way to my car." And he giggles at me as he tosses me the ball. He walks back behind the backstop. He picks up his gun and he goes, "Anytime you're ready." Now, this 19-year-old kid catching me gives me a sign for a fastball. I wind up, I throw it. It's a good pitch. I'm old. I'm like, that's a good pitch. And I look over the catcher's head as Gasaway shaking his radar gun, and I'm like, I do not even throw hard enough to register. That is worse than I thought. And all the young kids threw like 20 pitches. I get up to about 60, and I'm like, they're making fun of the fat old guy, and that's me. And when I get done, the 19-year-old kid catching me, he runs up to me, he goes, "Sir," which hurt my feelings pretty bad.
Yeah.
He goes, "You threw better than anybody today." I said, "Son, that's because nobody here could throw." He goes, "No, you had him talking." I said, "I'm sure I did. Thank you." I get my kids in the car, turn the air on. Gasaway, the scout, meets me in my car. He goes, "I remember you. Back at Ranger Junior College, you were a star football player. Everybody thought they could make a pitcher out of." I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Jimmy, back then you were tall and thin, and you threw 87 or 88 with great movement." And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, I don't know that you've done your time off, aside from eat. But the first pitch you threw without warming up was 94. Everything after that went up to 98. At that point in time,
there's no way.
At that point in time, I've got a happy dance going on in my head like anybody on this planet would when they go, "You're throwing 98. But what quickly occurred to me was, you have been throwing 98-mile-an-hour batting practice at high school kids. You're getting fired."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Don't be surprised if you get a phone call." Well, the phone call turned into another tryout. "We want to see you throw again if you could actually throw that hard, or if your arm fell off."
Yeah.
So I call my high school kids who are an hour away from where I lived, and I said, "They want me to try out again. If I do well, they want me to sign a minor league contract."
Now, how long after that first tryout would the next tryout be?
We made the bet. 3 months later in June, I try out.
Okay.
2 days later, I try out again.
2 days after throwing how many pitches?
60.
60? Weren't you sore? Or batting practice probably helped you a lot, but weren't you?
I was sore, and everybody goes, "What kind of workout were you doing? I mean, you're missing muscle in your shoulder." My workout had nothing to do whatsoever with me throwing 98 to 100. Nothing.
That's amazing.
And I call my kids, and I said, "Look, I got this job in Fort Worth at a great big high school, the opportunity to work with more kids, a bigger environment. I'm successful at this. I'm good at this. This baseball thing that I've dreamed about my entire life, I failed at that every single time. I can't do that again." And they said, "Coach, you told us if we ever had our dream in front of us, you'd chase it, no matter what." And I said, "Yeah, but I was lying." So 2 days later, and rain so bad they had to hand me a brand new baseball every pitch, my kids are being held by my high school kids as they're watching me throw 98 to 100 at the catcher.
In the rain.
Sign a contract, minor league contract. I took a pay cut.
Okay, you're going too fast. That's, first of all, unbelievable. right? I mean, in that moment, when that happened, because you throw again, you're hitting that radar. What does your arm feel like in that moment, first of all? Because does it feel good? Obviously, I mean, you're throwing 98, so there's no pain.
No.
And their eyes are lighting up. The scouts are like, this can't be. I mean, you're 35. If you guys don't understand, if you don't understand baseball, in baseball terms, that you're on the downward, spiral, if you will. And people aren't looking at you. I mean, you're just not. 35 years old, unless you've had this illustrious career, you're not getting signed by anybody. But you're throwing 98 miles an hour in a tryout, 35, and they sign you to a minor to come to spring training?
To go...
Or just to
No,
go
go
right? I mean, I know the
straight
movie said you went right into...
They sent me right to rehab camp.
Okay.
And I thought, the first day there, everybody comes out from the front office to watch me throw. And I'm thinking I'm crazy as a lark, man. But my head football coach at the high school in Fort Worth is like, I will keep your job open as long as I can. Your job is waiting for you. And so I thought, I get to be a kid again at 35. Why not play?
Why not?
And then I throw, and I think I'm done. And I'm like, I'm going to go in and shower. It's Florida. It's humid.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, no. Come out here to the outfield line. And that's when I started running again.
Ooh.
And then I got comebackers, and I had to do pickoff plays. And all the stuff I'm teaching, I'm now doing again. And 3 weeks there, 3 weeks of the best diet I never want to be on again.
Yeah.
30 pounds lighter. And they send me straight from rehab camp where guys get well from injuries and surgeries to meet the AA team on the road. We meet in Zebulon, North Carolina, and people always go, what was it like when you walked into that clubhouse in Zebulon?
Yeah.
And when I walked in with my bags, I had a kid turn around and go, hey, we got a new coach.
Yeah.
And immediately I thought, well, I don't know if I like you very much.
Yeah.
And you're going to love this because you're a baseball guy. What is the worst thing you could possibly do when you haven't pitched in a long time and you coach baseball and you come in with a guy on first, you warm up, what is the worst thing you could possibly do before you ever throw a pitch? I balked.
Oh, no way.
The guy stuttered on first and my leg did this, and I'm like...
Free base.
So I'm giggling. Guy gets second. I don't care. I'm giggling. Catcher comes out. He goes, what are you laughing about? I said, I coach people not to do this. Ray Searage is our pitching coach.
Ray was my coach.
And he comes out.
He was
and
your coach right then?
Yeah. He goes, what?
Ray Searage.
Yeah.
He was
And
my
Bill
coach
Russell
in
was our
Madison,
manager.
94.
Yeah. Awesome guy.
Awesome guy.
He goes, what are you laughing about? And I tell him, he starts laughing. The umpire comes out and he giggles too. And I'm like, I coached this. I coached not to do this. And that's the first thing I did. Well, I strike out a guy and I pick that guy off. My inning's over. Go in. 91, 92. It's okay. He's not crazy. He's pretty good for an old dude. Second night, throw 2 innings, strike out 5 guys, throw 98 and 99.
Interesting.
With movement that is just unbelievable.
Well, why do you think it was 91, 92 before? Just you weren't ready to go?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
It's just strange that I jumped up 8 or 9 miles an hour overnight.
Yeah.
And as I look back at it as a 60-year-old, I think God was just getting my feet wet.
Yeah.
And he was using what meant the most to me as a kid to get my attention as an adult. And after that night, second night in AA, they sent me to AAA. So for 2 months, I played for the Durham Bulls.
Yeah.
They want to see what I
Old
could
Durham.
do. And so I'm watching guys on their way up, on their way down, and guys just trying to hold on. And it's an amazing ride. I'm getting to be the kid again. I'm not making the moves. I am a move.
Yeah.
And so getting to watch it from that perspective of again helps you grow in that field even more and go, well, what would I do here? And why would he do that here? And this is what I would have done. And I'm not second-guessing anybody. I'm just like playing chess in my head.
Yeah.
And then one interview from a local station over the next 2 months turned into boom microphones in the bullpen and everybody watching the crazy 35-year-old throw to a point to where we get to AAA playoffs against the Charlotte White Sox. And this is for International League Championship. And we're down to the last game. And this team is the team I have not done well against. I still have stripes on my shin bone from Chad Matola
Oh, wow.
hitting a line drive at me that I thought I could skate save that landed in their dugout. And 35, I might have been able to throw hard. Reflexes were not quite there. But the last game of the season, Bobby Munoz, who was trying to get back to the big leagues, who had had elbow surgery, was from Dallas. And I was going to ride home with Bobby because we had become good friends in the minors. And so we had our bags packed in his truck, and it's 2-1 when I come in, we're losing. It's 2-1 when he comes out, we lost, season's over. And so I'm standing at my locker in Charlotte, North Carolina, when a manager, Phil Evers, comes up to me, he goes, "I need to talk to you." And I looked around the locker room, and all I see are people either smiling or people crying. And I'm like, "I don't think so." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because everybody else is crying, and I don't want to cry." And he just shakes his head at me because he knows me. Sarcasm, baseball go together. And I walk to his office, and I've got my head down. I'm not sad. I'm not upset. I am trying to process how in 6 months I've gone from coaching and making a bet with a group of high school kids nobody thought could win to now being one phone call away.
Mm-hmm.
And as I walk in, I didn't realize it, but our big league general manager's there. And he looks at me, he goes, "You can smile. You're going to be in Texas tomorrow." And I didn't get it. And I said, "I know, Bobby and I are going there right now." And he said, "No, there's a uniform waiting for you at the ballpark, and that's where we are right now."
Wow.
And I was stunned. And I thought, all because of a group of kids. So when people go, God can use anybody.
How many months from the moment you hit AA to the moment you were in Texas in the big leagues?
2 months and 3 days.
2 months and 3 days? That's all it was. Wow. Okay, so now, I mean, your head has to be spinning as you just said. You're going, wait a minute. I was just coaching high schoolers. I'm going to the big leagues. What would you do in that moment?
I thank God.
Yeah?
Because there's no way
Yeah.
without him. There was a game I warmed up in AAA, and I'd thrown like 3 days in a row. And left center field, there was a sign, radar, telling you how hard you throw. Throw a warm-up pitch, I turned around 74. Warm-up pitch, 74. Warm-up pitch, 75. Oh, man, I have nothing. Guy steps in the box, says play ball. Catcher gives me a sign for a fastball. I throw it. I turn around, 97. And I'm like,
what?
I don't even understand what's going on.
That's amazing.
But I know he has me there for a reason. And he used the one thing that could possibly have turned my life around to the point where all I want to do is stuff for him now. And it helped a group of kids who, when I pushed them, they pushed back and they made each other better. He worked through a group of kids to help push me when I thought all the doors were closed.
Wow.
He pushed me when the medical community said, "You have 85% of the muscle out of your arm. There is no way you can ever play baseball again. Not only do you not throw 87, you throw 98 to 102.
That's nuts.
It's nothing that I did. It's no workout that I did. It's not doing batting practice. It's all God.
It's got to be God. Now you get there. What help us understand the feeling of walking into the big league clubhouse for the first time, and what are you doing? What are you seeing? What's happening? I mean, is everything coming at you fast? How is that all happening?
Well, outside, on the plane from Charlotte to Texas, I'm sitting next to Julio Franco.
Oh, wow.
Who was only 20 at the time. Actually, he's been playing for like 35 years.
Yeah, right.
The guy eats better than anybody I've ever seen in my life and stays in unbelievable shape.
Yeah.
And halfway through the flight, he looks at me and goes, "Jimmy," he goes, "enjoy this. You deserve it."
Wow.
And so we get to the ballpark in Arlington. Number one, I've been out of baseball so long, I have no idea that you can drive cars underneath the stadium to get to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
So they pull up right to the door. Before I can go in, they've got a table set up with the money guy. And I had to sign my contract. And they give me meal money for 10 days, which was more money than I made in a month and a half teaching and coaching.
Yeah.
And I thought, I could get used to this.
Yeah.
But when I walk in, they've heard about the crazy science teacher for 3 months. The first person to come up to me is Wade Boggs,
Wow.
who had just gotten his 3,000th hit like a week or two before. Comes up and he hugs me, he goes, that is the best story I've ever heard in my life.
That's awesome.
And I'm still a coach and a fan, and I'm like geeking out, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you're Wade Boggs, you like chicken. And
Yeah, yeah.
ridiculous. Roberto Hernandez, Fred McGriff, Crime Dog, one of the best.
Wow. Oh, yeah. I
Not
love
only
Freddie.
ball players, but one of the best dads I've ever seen. And Jose Canseco was next to my locker. And I'm just like, this is baseball.
This is real.
This is what I've wanted my entire life. And we get ready, we go out for batting practice, and Jose Canseco's on one side of me, Fred Griff's on the other, Wade Boggs across from me, Roberto Hernandez is over here. Guys that a few months ago I was watching on TV, not even going, man, if I could just do that, just enjoying the game. And for that small amount of time, being a kid watching baseball played at its best. And it was a lot of fun to sit there and do that. Johnny Oates, the opposing manager at the time, God rest his soul, let 150 people in the game that day at the ballpark in Arlington that had ties to me.
Oh, wow.
So my high school kids, my kids who I haven't seen in 3 months, they're there. My mom missed it. She was on a women's weekend retreat up in Branson, so her husband shows up, and his kids show up, and people I went to college with showed up. People who said they went to high school with me showed up.
Yeah, everyone.
They got old. I have no idea who they are. But it was just fun being a part of that.
Wow.
And I'm like, I've thrown 3 days in a row in the AAA playoffs. I'm just going to take it in, man. And so we do batting practice, and I go back in, I get ready for the game, and Roberto Hernandez ended up being my best friend in the big leagues. And he's teaching me the ins and outs and having me talk to other guys on other teams about how best to do the job I'm there to do. And they've taken me under their wing. And everybody goes, well, weren't there jealous people? They probably were. But there were so many good people. And it doesn't matter if you're in charge of a church or you're a baseball player or you're in charge of a company. There's always that thorn of someone who's going to try to get under your skin whenever they can. And so baseball's the same way. But these guys were all nice. And so I'm sitting there for 8 innings enjoying my first game with my jersey and my number on my back in a bullpen that 2 years before, I was there with my softball team, because I played slow pitch softball, on our way to a national tournament. And we're watching the game, and I'm like, if I could play on this field, that would be so cool. And now I'm on the field looking up where I sat, going, this is cool.
No way.
All because of a group of kids. All because of God. When I did everything for me, nothing worked. When I did it for everybody but me, that's when things clicked.
What a lesson right there. That's
And so when you ask
really
me about
good.
my faith, that's when it came to the forefront of my mind, because in AAA, there were a lot of times I could have left and a lot of times I wanted to. And the movie kind of depicts that.
Yeah, were you feeling that pressure home?
And
just
not
being
able to
gone?
pay the bills, making minor league money. I got 3 kids at home.
Right.
What do you do? And every time would be a prayer. God, I'm hard-headed. If you want me to stay, you got to have something to happen, because
Yeah.
I shouldn't be here.
Did you ever have a conversation with the manager, with anybody, to say, look, I got a family. I'm not going to be able to linger in the minor leagues year
No.
after year? No?
No.
Okay, that's good.
I was just
They
busy
went.
being a kid and praying. God,
Yeah.
you got to let me know. Well, Bobby Munoz had a Louisville Slugger contract, and so the rep for Louisville Slugger, Chuck, I think his name was, came in, and Bobby talks him into giving me a glove. Well, that night, I wear it in the game, and the next week, I'm in Sports Illustrated with the glove with Louisville Slugger across here. I get a glove contract. Money goes home, I stay.
Good to go, yeah.
The next month's a shoe contract. Money goes home, I stay.
Okay.
The next time was a Little League game when I was really frustrated, and I was right at the end of the time when I could go back and take that job in Fort Worth and be a football coach and the head baseball coach, my time has run out. I either stay or I go home. And I look out at this group of kids playing this game that I played for a hot dog and a Coke when I was a kid.
Wow.
And I'm watching them have fun. And I'm like, I got to ride this and see where it's going. And then a few weeks later, I'm in the big leagues.
So you're in the bullpen now, your first big league game. You've thrown 3 days in a row. They call you in?
In the 8th inning, they say, Morris, warm up. And I'm like, all right, they just want me to warm up in front of 40,000 people. That's cool. 2 minutes later, I'm in the game. And when they open the bullpen and I make my run to the mound, everything I've been through my whole life flashes in front of me. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the ups and downs of life, the good choices, the bad choices, the free will choices, the God choices, all of it. And by the time I stepped my spikes onto the dirt of the mound of the ballpark in Arlington, I'd come to one conclusion. I would not change one thing about my journey.
Wow.
Because that made me who I am.
That got you there.
That got me there.
I mean, that's powerful. Now, you come in, and what did you do? I know the movie shows it, but tell us how it went, how you felt. Was adrenaline just through the roof at that point, and you're just going, I'm here?
Yeah, part of me is like conflicted because I'm playing for Tampa, but they're talking about me on the big field, on the center field screen and over the microphone, and so people are clapping at an opposing stadium.
Yeah.
And so that part kind of flew by me. But then after I throw my first warm-up pitch and convinced myself the dimensions aren't any different here than they are at my high school field in West Texas. It's 60 feet, 6 inches. It's the same, so I warm up. Tom Goodwin's the runner at first for Texas. Royce Clayton is an all-star that year. He's coming up to face me.
Wow.
Now, the movie set in real life happened a little bit differently. On the movie set, I struck him out in 3 pitches. In real life, I throw 2 fastballs. He swings at one, he takes one for strike 2. He fouls the 3rd pitch off over the first base dugout and strikes out on the 4th pitch.
Okay.
On the movie set, John Lee Hancock, our director, after 8 hours of trying to get the guy to foul off, looks at me and goes, you know what? You struck him out in 3 pitches.
That's right.
I'm like, all right.
Sounds good.
And after the game, the clubhouse kid from Texas Rangers clubhouse comes over with a sanitary sock filled with baseballs. And he goes, Mr. Morris, there are some guys over in the other clubhouse who want your autograph.
Wow.
It was Pudge Rodriguez and all these guys who were just unbelievable players at
Hall
the time.
Hall of Famer, yeah.
And I'm like, well, I want their autograph too.
Yeah.
And the next day we go to Anaheim. And Bill Plaschke for the LA Times writes this huge article, interviews all my kids. It's a Sunday edition. It covers the whole front page of the sports page. That is the day I found out about room service. Because I go into the restaurant, I sit down, I'm going to have breakfast, and I pull out the sports page, and I'm all over it. Wow. Everybody in the restaurant's looking at me. So I go back to my room, order breakfast. But during that night, my 3rd night in the big leagues, they had to change my name in the hotel. Because everybody wanted to talk about movies and books and documentaries, and it was just, and it was going so quickly.
Yeah, you just get to the big leagues, and now you're getting hit up with movies and books.
Everybody's going, what did you do in your time off? I prayed. Yeah. And now I'm here. So for the 4 days we were in Anaheim playing, my agent, Steve Canner, would come by and get me, and we'd go have a breakfast, and I'd meet somebody with one studio. And then we'd have lunch, and I'd meet somebody with another studio, and he'd take me back to the ballpark for stretching and batting practice. The next day, same thing. And there were several meetings that I got up out of, and I was like, I'm not doing this. This is not it. This is not happening. So finally, we get out of Burbank, Disney. Michael Eisner is the president at that time. And Steve, my agent, looks at me and goes, what do you want? I said, I want a movie about kids who were counted out from the get-go. Never going to amount to anything. And then they found a way to overcome that. The other part of me wants a movie about adults who have an opportunity for a second chance, and do they have the guts to walk through that door? And what is their motivation? And when I walked in, we sit down, and Mark Ciardi was a producer on the movie. He was a minor league roommate back in the early 80s. And he's standing next to Eisner, and Eisner goes, what we have in mind is a movie about kids who are counted out from the beginning. And I looked at Steve, and I went, Mickey has big ears. It was pretty much everything I just said. And we were sold before we walked out of the office.
Phenomenal.
And everything happened in such order. It was not human order.
Yeah.
It was way above that pay grade.
Yeah.
And God used the one thing he knew would get my attention. And people go, and it was baseball? For a kid, for me, that was survival.
Yeah.
And then to bring that back and throw that out there and go, hey, you're not throwing 87, you're throwing 98.
To gain velocity in your older age.
Yes.
That's the Lord. There is nothing scientifically that you could ever point to that could say, no, you can gain velocity if you do this exercise and you do this kind of work. And no, it is a scientific fact. You do not gain velocity as you get older. I mean, you might get trickier, you might change speeds better, but you're not going to gain velocity.
And you gain a slider, which you never had in your entire life. And you throw it from 81 to 91.
That's nuts.
How does that happen?
Yeah. That's
and
right there.
Our manager pulled me aside one day, and he goes, you have one of the best breaking balls I've ever seen. And he compared me to one of the Yankee greats who had a slider. I'm like, no way. Because my fastball did this, and this did this. And now I'm facing guys. And so Disney executives come while we're in Anaheim. And I think I struck out 4 out of 6 people I faced that night. And my minor league manager from rookie ball and A ball is there. And he's sitting next to Mark, who was my roommate. And he goes, I won't tell you what he said, but basically it was, where was that when he played for me? Yeah. And God. No other explanation.
Amazing. Okay, so you go with with Tampa Bay that year. You had 2 seasons with Tampa Bay, right? Did you come back?
Part of
2 seasons.
Yeah.
You came back the next year. Did you end up getting injured again, and that ended it? What happened?
I hurt my arm.
Yeah.
And I kind of tore up my Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
So Dr. Joe did a tightening job with Dr. Elatrash in charge and Dr. Job monitoring. And it was a doctor that the Rays were not happy I went and saw.
Really?
And so at the end of that season of 2000, they released me. But I had gotten in such good shape that Dr. Job, who was a Dodgers doctor, told them they needed to invite me to spring training. And so they did. And what normally takes people 12 to 18 months to get back, I was throwing 98, 99, 9 months later.
Wow.
And
that is very fast for Tommy John.
All God. And it's nothing I did.
So what happened with the spring training there with Dodgers? Did you end up?
One, I found out that the internet had become huge.
Yeah.
And players were spitting out gum. And there were people coming behind them, putting it in baggies and selling it over the internet. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. But I also got to meet a lot of good guys. I got to meet one of my heroes, Sandy Koufax.
Wow, yeah.
And some of the people who have played with the Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't, I don't think God went, I'm going to give this dream back to you and you're going to play for a long time.
Yeah.
I want your attention, is what he wanted. And he got it. And something happened between playing in LA during the winter and getting ready out at Dodger Stadium or at Dr. Job's clinic. In the 5 days that I left LA to go to Vero, where they still were for spring training, to where I couldn't even play catch when I got there, 5 days later.
Wow.
And I'm afraid of the ball.
Yeah.
And can't play anything. I mean, the pepper, I can't put the bat on the ball. I teach people how to bunt. I can't even bunt the ball anymore. Wow. We're doing bunting practice. I'm not throwing strikes. I'm like, what has happened in 5 days? And so Dr. Job puts a shot in the back of my shoulder and tells people, you'll be okay in a few days. It was time for me to go. Jim Tracy was our manager. And I walked into his office one day. I said, I was never going to set the world on fire, and I knew that. But I want to appreciate you guys for bringing me in. But it's time for me to go home and watch my kids dream. And I packed my truck up and I drove home. And he goes, man, if I had 25 of you, we'd never have to worry about workouts.
That's awesome.
He goes, you love baseball and it's easy to see. And I never had any regrets. I left, went back to Texas, got my kids, went to the movie set outside Austin, and we filmed the movie The Rookie.
How soon after?
They were filming it when I got back.
Oh, they were already
Yeah,
started?
they were. It was a quick turnaround, from what I hear about with movies.
Wow.
And it was the beginning of a long journey for Sean and I.
Yeah.
Ended up not being able to button my own buttons on dress shirts, tie my own tie.
Amazing.
Diagnosed with CTE. Well, how do you prove that, Dr. Yankovic, one of the top movement specialists in the world? He goes, well, you have to die. Well, I'm not ready to do that.
Wow.
CTE had turned into Parkinsonism, which turned into Parkinson's. And so then I'm shaking, I'm dragging my leg around. I can't dress myself, so Shauna has to travel with me. I'm doing all my speeches, but in the meantime, I'm a mess. And again, you start thinking, well, I'm in control of me. I will do what I need to do to get through. Basically sleeping from speech to speech. I would sleep when I got home, and I would speak until we left again. I would sleep in the airport, on the plane, in the hotel, go speak, do a great speech, then go back to my room and go to sleep. And I had no energy. It was terrible. And so what do? You fall back on your own vices. Well, the medicine's not helping me. I'll start drinking. And so then you add alcohol into the mix, and that was a mess. And so at 52, I'm at rehab, at a rehab facility in Florida. And I think at 52, for the first time in my entire life, I got to concentrate on Jim Morris, the human being. And I didn't have to worry about a wife. I didn't have to worry about kids. I had to worry about me.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's not fun to talk about, but it is fun to talk about because I found myself.
Yeah.
It was a Christian rehabilitation facility, and my counselor was a pastor. And he waited for almost 10 days before he pulled me in to talk to me. He goes, I wanted to watch how you're going to handle things. And when I walked into his office, he had memorabilia from every ball field in the country.
Wow.
Because he was a huge baseball fan.
Oh, wow.
And he came in, he goes, why are you here? And I said, because I lost who I'm supposed to be. And he goes, but you believe in Jesus? I said, absolutely. And he goes, so you know he's with you all the time? I said, yeah. He goes, so he's kind of your partner in this. He's next to you in the driver's seat. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, let me ask you a question. If you have Jesus with you, why isn't he driving? And I don't know what that did to me, but it flipped a switch. And I'm like, duh.
Wow.
And it's been 7.5 years, not touched alcohol.
Wow.
We've still had surgeries and things that have gone wrong. But the guy who had a deep brain stimulator put in 2015 had it taken out in 2020 because I did not have Parkinson's anymore. And they go back and they do all the nuclear testing of your brain. They said your dopamine levels are perfect.
Wow.
You don't have Parkinson's. They did all the physical stuff. I closed my eyes. I turned circles. I'm out lifting weights in the garage with my dog. He's asleep. I'm listening to Mercy Me. And I'm just lifting. I would sit down and do a set because I was still getting tired. And I just start hearing, you're healed. You're healed. And it turned into a cacophony of voices. You're healed. And I think my friends are messing with me. I got both garage doors up. I'm like, uh-huh. And I get up and I go around the corner, and he hears it too because he's with me. And the hackles on his back of his neck are up. And I'm like, I go back and I sit down, and the warmest voice you could ever hear goes, you're healed.
Yeah.
See, I want to start crying now.
Do it. It's okay.
And now, are there other things wrong with me? Absolutely. and we don't know what some of the stuff is. I got a surgery scheduled on my back for the 20th of this month. And Parkinson's was healed. And it was nothing that I did again.
Yeah.
It was just Jesus showing him going, I'm going to rock your world this time. He thought baseball was cool.
Wow.
Because before I couldn't even walk around the block without a cane and dragging my leg. And now I can run again?
Well, and now you travel.
I travel.
Doing good travel. I mean, you obviously traveled here, all the way from Texas, and you feel good and all of that.
Doing
for the most part.
speeches everywhere.
Yeah, you're still, let's talk about that a little bit. As far as you go from big leagues, movie, I don't want to skip the movie part. I got to talk about the movie a little bit because there's a couple parts in it that I want you to let me know about. Like, okay, the scene where you threw past a speedometer on the street. Is that real or was that just part of Hollywood?
It could have been real.
Yeah.
I saw the sign. I taught science. I was not smart enough to realize you could actually do that.
Okay.
Our screenwriter did it. It lit up. And then when they filmed it
Okay.
for the movie, Dennis had so much fun with it, it stayed.
Yeah.
But it let everybody know. I had no idea how hard I threw
Yeah.
till I actually got to the tryout. Because the kids who couldn't hit me, now I couldn't get out. So now I'm going to go really excite the baseball people when I can't get high school kids out.
Yeah.
And so that scene sets that up.
The funny part about that scene is, you have to know that a bunch of guys that had arm problems years earlier are probably going out to the roadside trying to light up a speedometer sign, right?
Pastor Jeremy, I know they are. Yeah. Because when I get home from doing the movie tour and everything, I had a lot of friends who were DPS.
Okay.
And they had a softball team and we played against them. And they're like, dude, every sign in the state is dented because of you. And I think it's funny. In my first spring training in 2000, everybody's got all these young, attractive females waiting for them when they come out of the clubhouse. I have 500 angry scouts. Do you know how many people are trying to try out right now because of you?
That's exactly what I thought.
It was just all of it was a blast.
Well, it was so inspiring too. I mean, even personally, 98, I blow up my shoulder. So I have full reconstructive shoulder surgery after 10 years in the minor leagues. And I'm done. I know the doctor had sat me down, you're done. And so I knew it would be trouble. But he said, but we'll do the surgery in case one day you have kids and you want to play catch or something. After we do the surgery and stuff, in rehab, you'll want to go through the rehab and you'll be able to play catch. I said, yeah, I expect to have kids one day and that'd be great. So I do the whole thing, do the surgery and the rehab. And so it's only 4 years later when the movie comes out. And I'm thinking, I'm going to go and throw. Jim has got me fired up. I was excited. But I didn't go find a roadside thing or whatever. By then I was fully in ministry and fully going. But everybody was asking me at that time, are you gonna try? Are you gonna go out for a tryout? And it was always in my mind. But I knew what God had called me to do at that point. I knew I was doing what I was supposed to do. But man, you inspired a lot of people with that, with that story. So you better believe there's a bunch of guys going to these tryouts and getting their arm back in shape, and ibuprofen sales went through the roof.
God has a different plan for everybody.
Yeah.
And you're in charge of everything you're in charge of now. If you'd have been a baseball player, where would that dream have gone?
Right.
The dream you didn't even know you wanted.
Yep. It's interesting, and I got saved in baseball chapel, and I look back on that, and I think about how God prepared me for that moment when the doctor, after getting the MRI, and he just looked at me and goes, hey, your career's over. And had I not had the Lord a few years earlier, I would have been devastated. I would have gone the alcohol, addiction, drug mode, because all the guys that I knew were my buddies that got released. That's the avenue they went, because it's your identity, it's everything to you. But the Lord really got a hold of my heart over that time. We were doing Bible studies on the team, and I saw the power of the Word of God. I saw what was happening. And so when that doctor said that to me, a peace came over me. You can't explain it. Can't explain it other than it's the Lord. And I didn't hear an audible voice, but I heard in my heart, don't worry about it. I got you. And it was it literally was only a few months later I became a youth pastor, and things started happening ministry wise from there. But yeah, God has a plan through all that. We trust Him through it all. My dream as a kid was to be a big league ball player forever. I just thought I would play forever, and so for Him to be able to give me a new dream of what I'm going to do for Him after being so selfish with my life, either all the way up until accepting the Lord as a young adult. It was powerful to have that feeling of, wow, you got something else for me. I never thought that would be possible. And so absolutely, like you said, God's got something for every single person listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, no matter where they are in their life. He's not done. We say it all the time here. If you have a pulse, God has a purpose. He's got a purpose for your life right this moment. And so your words are super encouraging, to hear that. Now that movie,
has a second chance for everybody.
Yes, right?
I've had so many second chances. It's ridiculous. And some of my friends have also who have been on journeys. All we have to do is open our hearts and listen, because He's talking to us.
Yep.
And I tell people all the time, He talks loudly in a soft voice.
That's a good way to say it. I like that.
And He's powerful in what He does. And when He wants your attention, one way or the other, He'll get it.
Yeah.
And still, you can slip and you can slide, and God goes, that's all right, we're going to work from here.
Now, that movie grossed $81 million worldwide, latest stat I saw. Came out in 2002. And let me ask you this question about the finances of the movie. How did that work? Did they give you a sum up front? Say, here, you're selling your rights to the movie, to us, or do you get residual? How does that even work in Hollywood?
I had Dennis. So Dennis signs on to do the movie, right?
Yeah.
I go to Brentwood, and I play catch with Dennis Quaid in his front yard the day he signs the contract. And I'm like, this is different.
Yeah.
And he goes, take all the money up front. He goes, they'll find a way not to pay you.
Oh, good.
Take the money up front.
Good advice.
And so that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I was in the movie. The back of my hairline was in the movie when I was an umpire. And, I get like $3 every 4 or 5 months. But I'm part of the guild, man. But that's not here nor there. Every time I see that, I just get a smile because I get to watch Dennis where he was when we met and where he is now.
Yeah, man, that's something right there. That would be a great podcast to sit down with him and
I think the best compliment he ever gave me was the night we won the ESPY Award. And Disney is sending him to one party, and they're sending Sean and I to another party. And he calls me back, and he hugs me, and he goes, I want you to know you've helped me get my career back.
Wow.
And I thought, for somebody of your stature who's made 53 movies at that time, that is an incredible compliment.
That's amazing.
And just been blessed with the people I've been able to meet. And the person who never talked, my kids came to my first speech, and they're like, Coach, you said more than 1 hour, and you said in 2 years. And just for them to get to see the transformation too. Blessings everywhere. We have to open our eyes and not judge what we think we see and see things for what they are. See things how God wants us to see them because that's how He sees them.
That's a good word. That is a really good word. Well, is there anything you would want to share that we haven't maybe covered that I wouldn't want to end a podcast without giving you the opportunity to say, you know what, I wish you would ask me this, or anything like that?
Well, I will tell you this. I was supposed to come talk to your church last year.
Yeah.
I don't know what went on with you guys, but it ended up being the perfect time for me. And my best friend, who lived part-time up in Poway, was in Austin, had a massive heart attack, and passed away. 10 days later, we're supposed to go to the funeral because there's some kind of laws where somebody dies in a hotel room, it takes a lot longer to release the bodies.
Okay.
And so we're going to the funeral. Well, I have a grand mal seizure. As I'm sitting there watching the movie with my wife, I'm like, do you see, are all those lights there, or there's like flashes? She goes, there's a few flashes, but not many. The next thing I know, I wake up in the back of an ambulance.
Oh my.
And I'm like, what happened? They're like, you had a tonic-clonic seizure. I'm like, well, at least it wasn't a grand mal seizure. Like, that's exactly what it was, and it was a bad one. Well, they did a CT scan, and what that showed was I had a small bowel obstruction. So Shauna is with me with everything we do, speeches, travel. We do everything together. She goes to her Bibles class with her ladies and stuff. Other than that, we're best friends along with being partners. They're going to send me, she calls, because the doctor in our hometown didn't know what to do with me. So she calls my not my gastro guy, but my stomach guy. The Parkinson's medications had eaten my stomach and made it stop. And so I had to have a gastric bypass back when all the Parkinson's stuff started. And his deal, he wanted to put me on more medication. This guy, Dr. Duperior, says there will be a hospital room waiting for him. Get him here now. And our choice was you can go in the ambulance or your wife can take you. If you go in the ambulance, you get in right away. If you go with your wife, and I knew it right away, she didn't need to be making a 60-mile journey just so she could watch me get checked in the hospital so she could drive 60 miles back home. So for the first time I've ever done, I said, you stay home, I'll be fine. They drive me 60 miles. I don't remember hardly any of the trip. I remember seeing Christmas lights and stuff. It was December 13th. I get to my room, they put the IV in, they take my blood pressure, everybody leaves me alone. It's dark. By the time I get checked in, it's real late. And I start hearing this singing. And I'm thinking, oh, they've got Christmas music piping. That's pretty cool. And maybe they're outside. You know, I'm on the 5th floor. Maybe they've got a group of carolers. But this is the best music you've ever heard in your life, where the singing is its own instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the nurse comes in, I'm like, you guys playing Christmas hymns or what are you doing? She goes, sir, this surgery and recovery floor, there is no music. This is total silence. I'm like, okay, she doesn't hear it. The lady comes in to take my blood pressure and do the vitals, and I ask her. And I go, do you hear that? She goes, hear what? I said, that music. She goes, this is surgery and recovery. We do not have music on this floor. So I'm like, okay. And so for the first time in my life, I'm not trying to block anything out. I don't pick up my phone. I don't have the TV on. I'm just staring at the wall. Something is telling me to just be still. And so I'm still, and I hear the best music I've ever heard in my life, to where the voices sound like musical instruments. And then after a while, I'm like, well, I'm having surgery in the morning. I'm going to see if this is real. I will roll over on my right side because I'm 85% deaf in my left ear. I could hear it better. I'm like, okay. Shauna comes the next morning. It's still going. I'm like, do you hear that? She said, hear what? I said, that music. They've been singing Emmanuel all night.
Oh, man.
She goes, I don't hear it. About 2 hours after she was there, it stopped. And then they start getting me ready for surgery, and they're taking me down in the elevator. It starts again. And then Jeremy, at this time, I'm like, this is a coin flip. Either this is a good thing,
You're going home.
or it's a real good thing.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm fine with it.
Wow, yeah.
It's just God letting me know he was there.
You had that peace.
I was covered.
Mm.
And what was going to be a 3 or 4 hour surgery ended up being a 1 hour fix. The next morning I went home.
Wow. Any residual issues?
Nope.
With that? All good?
All good.
Praise the Lord.
It's amazing when we have our hearts open. Sometimes our hearts see a lot more than our eyes see.
Yeah, amen. Well said. Well, this has been an absolute joy for me, and I know for followers. They're going to be loving this and appreciating it. And we'd love for you guys to comment, ask questions. I'll send them over to Jim as you ask these questions, and we'll get answers. And we love this interaction. You guys have taken time to be here, to let us talk to you and hear your story and inspire us. And there's so many nuggets that you laid down during this conversation that we're going to pull out, highlight, and really learn from as well. Thank you so much, you, Shauna, as well. Shauna's off camera, but very much here, and we thank you. Really, thank you, Jim, for taking time to do this. This has been an absolute thrill.
Pastor Jeremy, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure, and we'll have you again, too. We look forward to that. Thank you guys for tuning in. And again, comment, let us know, ask questions. We love this. What was your favorite part about today's podcast? If you're watching it on YouTube, comment there. If you're just listening as you're driving, send us a note at some point. We appreciate that so much, and we're glad, hopefully, that you continue to tune in and watch and listen, because we want to continue to bring you inspiration through this podcast. God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Faith and Culture. God bless you.